You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. And tonight, of course, we're reviewing Episode 9, which, as we know now, is the second in this prison trilogy of episodes, basically. As was rightly corrected by, I think it was Voyager that corrected this last time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep, that was basically talking about that. So, of course, we're on an hour later than usual. But if you guys read our post in the community tab, you actually would have known that. So, basically, look for that stuff. Now that the community tab is available to us, the cool thing is we can actually put, anything we want, really. But a lot of times what we'll do is we'll let you guys know if there's any change in the schedule, like if we have to veer away from the 8 o'clock start time, or maybe if it's a pre-recorded episode or something, we'll let you know in the community tab. But we're also putting polls in there. If you guys haven't had a chance to do so already, well, first, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and basically hit the notification bell so you know when we're basically going on every week. However, the other thing is, in the community tab, we're also posting various polls and things like that to find out what you guys would like to see from this channel. And first up, you can vote on what we're doing for the night before Thanksgiving show. Now, again, that's probably not going to be live on YouTube because we got a copyright strike the last time we did it because we reviewed Family Guy's Blue Harvest. So far, the leader, it looks like we're probably going to review Family Guy's something Dark Side, which, of course, was their take on The Empire Strikes Back. So we're going to have to go live on, actually pre-record and put that on our Vimeo channel. And then in the community tab, we can give you guys a link to that so you can check it out. Although it is a lot more fun when the thing is actually live and we can interact with people, but I don't know, we'll figure it out. But with that said, yeah, Andor Episode 9. This one was kind of interesting to me. Now, overall, if you had to compare it to the last one, did you like it better? Did you not like it as much? Was it about the same? What were your basic thoughts about, at least, maybe not the overall episode, but how you would compare it to the last one? Because the last one, I remember, was the first one. I think we actually had somewhat of a difference of opinion. Not severely, but I remember I was way more into it than you were. You actually, although both of us were more into it than our audience was. I mean, the people chatting with us last week really, both you and I had to defend. I mean, even though I think I liked it better than you did, I think both of us had to really defend the honor of the show.
I defended some points, but I mean, overall, I didn't really care for that particular episode.
Yeah, I think you gave it a 6. You either gave it a 6 or a 7. I don't remember which one it was.
I gave it a 4.
Did you?
4. Yeah, it's low. It's like the lowest grade I've given in a while. But
maybe since Visions.
yeah.
There is that, right?
Yeah, but. Well, to answer your question though, how did this compare to episode 8?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this episode. This one was great writing. It was cool because excuse me, it kept the tension without action. That's what I loved about it. Like every moment of this show was kind of like, okay, like you felt the awkwardness or the tension in the room, so to speak. And that's what I really loved about this particular episode. So comparatively speaking, it was like 80% better than the last one.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that even though I found a lot to love in the last one, I think that those things that I loved about the last one were present in this one, except they were wrapped in a better episode. This one actually, I think, moved along a lot better. Meaning this episode.
Yeah.
This episode 9 was definitely... That's something that we can agree. Sure, I liked episode 8 a lot. But I mean, I have to admit, I even admitted in the midst of somewhat being, well, not me personally, but the episode during the attack that everybody was going through with the episode, because people watching just did not like that episode. And it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't my favorite episode. And I actually agreed with a lot of the points that people were making about it. I mean, it was slow moving. It was a lot of the things that were wrong with the last episode, I think were fixed with this one. But what I liked about both episodes, comparatively speaking, is that this episode, along with the last one, it gave us basically that same exposition, a little bit more into the canon, a little bit, it gave us a little bit more meat from the show itself, too. It delved into the characters more. It delved into, obviously, the fascism that is ever present. I think that this show really does the best job of any of the Star Wars shows, by design, I think, of showing us the true horror and brutality of the Empire. It shows us the microcosm of the Empire. We're not just seeing it as this big overall organizations that's doing this like macro-based thing where you're focused on Palpatine's plot and what he wants to do, and the Empire is really more like his vessel to do that. Here we're actually seeing the minutia. We're seeing how the Empire is actually affecting each of the individual planets and villages and towns and cities and everything. And then, of course, and I'll get into it because I'm sure it surprises no one that I took extensive notes on this episode as well. But it also really shows the emptiness and hollowness of what the Senate has become. And so I thought that they did a really good job there too. So yeah, overall, I would say that this episode was a better episode, but yet it maintained all of the stuff that I loved about the last episode.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can agree with you more on that.
He agrees. I think I throw a 3PO reference in a lot of our shows too, actually.
Well, 3PO, he's always got something to say, generally, so it fits. But yeah, I really enjoyed this episode for all the reasons that you said. This is really getting into the like you said, the minutia or the details. Like we know, okay, like in the original trilogy, Empire's bad, the rebels are good, okay, but why?
Yeah,
this is explaining why. Like you're understanding, and it gives context to the stakes. Once again, when you have stake in a game, that motivates. And now you understand why in Rogue One things were the way that they were. Now it makes A New Hope. Why you see it's called A New Hope now. Just even the title or sense now is because looking at what was going on, you would have no hope, right? Looking at the situations of Andor and Mon Mothma and Bix and everybody, like you would see, like, man, there's no hope of getting out of this. That's what it probably felt like. And then by the time A New Hope or Episode 4 is actually released, you understand everything with that laying about, when she says, "Oh, Governor Tarkin, I recognize your foul stench." And I was like, why does she say that? I mean, was she just being petty?
Exactly.
But now it has credence to it. Like you can give credence to it now because you see what the Empire has done, and he's leading this stuff. So it's like that's why she says a lot of this stuff. So everything now is starting to have even more depth and meaning to it.
Absolutely.
After watching just this episode.
Yeah. So David had actually chatted in. Hello, gentlemen. I couldn't wait for today's show. We did have to start an hour later, after all. Episode 9 was amazing, like watching the Q stroll. This is what I've been waiting for. It's nice. Every scene counted. It was so suspenseful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually, that wasn't even pre-planned when I put this comment up, but it actually transitions into a point that I thought was interesting about the structure of this episode. I thought that the overall structure of this episode was a little, like, I thought that when they would focus, say, on Deidre and a lot of her, her interrogation of Bix, or just
Mm-hmm.
interaction she might have had with Cyril or something like that. And then, of course, some of the other things, they would basically show us a good chunk, and they would intercut what couldn't be more than like a 20-second, 30-second scene or something of the prison stuff, and then immediately cut back to something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I did notice that as time went on in the episode, the prison scenes would get a little bit longer. But, I mean, if I had to levy any criticism against this episode, that would probably be what it is that even though I agree with David's point where it was very suspenseful, it moved, it basically was not feeling like you had a bunch of dead weight, which I think is something that the last episode suffer from greatly.
Mm-hmm.
Is you're just kind of like, all
Yeah.
right, man, let's go.
It's dragging.
Yeah, it's dragging.
Exactly.
The
Like
pacing.
you're pulling the weight. Yeah.
And that was what I said before. I was like, okay, there's a definite pacing problem with that episode. Even though, again, I found more to love about that episode than obviously a lot of people. But this episode, I think the pacing is good. I just wonder if maybe they couldn't have strung a couple of those prison scenes to be a little bit longer, because it was somewhat jarring to me in a way. Now, again, I have to admit that because of scheduling this week and everything, I had to do the thing that I really don't like to do, which is take notes right on the first viewing. I usually like to watch the episode first and then maybe go back and watch it and take some of the notes. So there might have been a little bit of an effect when I did that. Maybe. I don't know yet. I mean, it depends.
Yeah, honestly though, I really didn't have a problem with the pacing or anything on this particular episode. Me, I like. I feel like we got a nice, healthy amount of both. The only person I really missed seeing more of was Bix.
Mm-hmm.
That her situation, but I mean, her thing is kind of fine. I mean, she's just being tortured, but man, like the guy, the doctor.
Yeah.
Like, just the way that he talked to her, and just because he knows he has so much control, she's not going anywhere. He has the ultimate power. So how devious and kind of just almost like matter of fact that he was, it was
Very
just
much
like,
so.
I love that about him. Deidre, oh my, so like, man, like she has shown herself to be ruthless. Like
Well, and that's it.
she's pretty much brought herself to the point where she's about as I don't know, like she's about as evil as Moff Gideon. Just having, and that's who she kind of reminds me of, which is funny because they're both ISB agents, right?
Yeah.
So that's who she kind of reminded me. She reminds me of the Moff Gideon of this episode of this series. And I love that about her. She's very cool, calm, collected, but at the same time, you can see the intensity that she has in a lot of different areas and situations. She's super confident in herself. She's and the more we see her, we see how dominant she's starting to become. At first, you could see she was a little bit apprehensive. Like if you go back to the episode, maybe like episode 1, when we first meet her, she seems kind of, okay, on edge a little bit. And then of course she's having this whole thing with Blevin. But now, like, it seems he's in control of the situation, even to the point where the head guy, the old guy, can't think of his name, but he's even kind of like, okay, well, yeah, you're moving forward. Well, let's do it. Hey, she's bringing us all this information. All right, great. Let's act on it. So I really loved Deidre's character this episode. Andy Serkis, phenomenal job. Just everybody, man. Like everybody really was just like on in this particular episode.
Well, and going into that, because now I can actually get to some of the breakdown. I mean, the opening interrogation scene was just really intense, really incredible. Shows just how, like you said, ruthless and just how hopeless everything is under the Empire's rule. I mean, it just absolutely the most nihilistic thing. And It was interesting because I kind of wonder at the Blevin character. Just go into that for a second, because like I said, I got a ton of notes. But the Blevin character, I'm almost wondering if maybe that character wasn't designed to bring Deidre's full. Because, like you said, she was apprehensive, and she got a little bit more emboldened because that chief, I forgot his name too, but he basically more or less took her side openly and gave her hey, by any means necessary, achieve this kind of a directive. And so I think that emboldened her to really come into her own,
Yeah.
And I really think that that's something that's a turning point, and I think maybe that's why the Blevin character was there, because one of the things I noticed about this show, they don't seem to waste any characters. There's no like filler characters, and so every character does serve a purpose, and I think maybe that's why they put the Blevin character in. I'm not 100% sure, but that seems reasonable. And then of course that weird method that they had to torture her, where they had those weird sounds or whatever from some race that apparently it's really horrific when they're being screaming or something like that, and it just and you see when they put the headphones or whatever on her, and then after she's been going through it a while and she's all disheveled, you're just like, really? I mean, just from some screams, huh? Okay, well, whatever. But that's a really ingenious method that they used. And I couldn't help but, I'll tell you what else this does. It's funny you compare this to episode 4 too, because this really puts the Leia torture scene into perspective.
Yeah, I mean, even in the whole Leia thing was, honestly, it reminds me of the Han thing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Empire.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too.
But honestly, and it's funny because you and I joke about this all the time. What this truly reminded me of is Star Trek. How many lights do you see?
Oh yeah, the Kardashian. Cardassian. That would be torture. That would be a great spoof, right? It's like instead of the Kardashians, you had the Kardashians.
Yes, although that would be, I probably would prefer the Kardashians.
I know.
But no, that's what it kind of reminded me of. It's just like it's just bringing her to the brink of like, okay, she's experiencing now with what she saw her friend go through, and it's just like she can't go anywhere. She can't do. I mean, you just have to just sit there and just take it, and he's just and they revel in it, and that's just the maniacal, oppressive feeling that you get when you see this, is that she's really just like, okay, and she's trying to hang in there and hold on, and that's just it was just really chilling. And this is the thing, is that you have to remember, this is Disney. I keep forgetting this, but this is not.
Well, that's what they're trying to say. Hey, this is
like, this
not
is
your
not
typical...
House of Dragons on HBO. You know what I mean? Like, that you expect. Okay, you want to see some gruesome torture scene, but for this to be a Disney show, I mean, they're dark with this, man. I mean, this is really pushing the edge for Disney. You know what I mean? And when you put things in perspective, so yeah, I really enjoyed the fact that they're really going there, and they're really starting to show like, okay, this is why you should hate the Empire. It's not just because, oh, Darth Vader and the Emperor. No, it's like everyone in the Empire has this. It's Palpatine has caused this cancer to infiltrate into everything, and this is what it's become.
Well, and it's basically, it comes down to, again, I can't stress this enough, is that they, from the Empire's perspective, I'm not talking about Palpatine and Vader so much, but like a Deidre or a Gideon or any of these guys, they actually think that they're on the right side of this. They think they're doing the right thing. We're stomping out these terrorists that are, going to essentially disrupt society and all this other stuff. It isn't so much that they're against them. They actually think that they're doing the right thing. And they're using these methods in order to ensure that things get done quickly and efficiently and not
Mm-hmm.
messing around. And it's really, and it's funny because, and you see this later in the Mon Mothma's Senate pod scene or whatever,
Oh man, yeah.
where, you know, they're heckling her and you know, they're kind of protesting and all this other stuff. It's because everybody has more or less drank the Kool-Aid, and
Mm-hmm.
it almost makes you even want to see a prequel to this show, because it was almost like this would have to happen during the Bad Batch period, because you have this whole thing to where you had the nice shiny Republic, and of course you constantly, what echoes in my mind when I see Andor is Padme's line, "This is how liberty dies," with thunderous applause, because she and a
Mm-hmm.
handful of other you know, senators or whatever could see where this was going.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the changes that were going to happen. And the thing is that even though there's been all these changes, finally drinking the proverbial Kool-Aid now. You know, they're thinking that Palpatine is some sort of a savior of the galaxy, and they're right there behind him. And you're seeing what, you know, because they all used to be on the same side.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is one of the things that, you know, is really starting to show not just the darkness of the Empire, but the darkness of people, like
Yeah.
of the people who
Yeah.
support the Empire. Because you have to think about it. It's like, okay, like you said, you know, the Republic was once all shiny and, you know, benevolent and all that type of stuff, and now you're starting to see like, and I think that's why they that scene that they, I think it was in episode 8, when they were all kind of standing around at that party and they were all talking about
Mm-hmm.
the Empire, and it's like, oh, you know, the overreach. No, Palpatine is doing a great job. You know,
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
doing,
Yeah.
you know, and it's kind of like you start to see the darkness start to creep. So it's not just the dark side is taking over, but in mass volume though. It's not just a Sith thing, but it's like a everybody thing. Like a lot of people are succumbing to the toxicity of the Empire and the dark side of the Force, and you're starting to see the influence that it's had on a mass populace.
Yeah.
So when we get to that point, yeah, when you're seeing the Senate and everybody, you know, it's just like you don't even think that type of thing would have happened under the Republic. Just people just turning off stuff and, you know, heckling. I mean, yeah, people going to talk, and they did certain things, you know, during the prequel era, but it was still relatively, um,
Well, again,
it was relatively
they were
calm.
still
It was
united,
calm.
yeah, because they were still the Republic. You know, they had
It was calm. It was still
squabbles and
respectful.
disagreements, but right, because it was because they were doing the same system. They were just using the system and within the system to disagree or to do whatever, and you know, you could see that there was
Right.
stuff like that. But this gets kind of scary, and then of course, what's really interesting about it is the fact that they led up to this and they keep leading up to this slowly, because at first when she was in there, it sort of resembled, you know, like in the earlier episodes of Andor, it kind of resembled what we saw, but you could tell it's different. There's not as many people, you know, in the pods anymore. It's kind of like a
Hmm.
shell of what it once was. It's almost like it's for show. It's just demonstrative. There's no real power there. It's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
let them do whatever because, you know, it makes them feel better kind of thing. But now we're moving into the point to where there's actually people that if you're saying anything against Palpatine or whatever, they just kind of tune out. And
Hmm.
and of course, what echoes through my mind through this whole series is when Tarkin basically Imperial Senate basically has been dissolved, and you know the last remnants of the old Republic have been swept away. I mean, you're seeing that
Hmm.
happening in real time here
Hmm.
almost, and that's what's really
Yeah.
cool. But
Oh yeah.
getting back to the interrogation scene for a second, though, did you catch that almost shot for shot homage they did with the Leia thing when the door came down and they showed the legs? It's kind of like the same shot as what was in A New Hope, but with Vader, but that they did it a little bit differently.
I didn't catch that. I'll have to go back and look at that.
Oh yeah, it's really cool, man. It's a shot for shot thing. I thought that was a really cool little Easter egg that they put in there. But again, one of the things that I loved about it was the fact that, again, with the Han scene, with the Leia scene, you got a sense, because, they kind of shut the door and then you don't really see anything.
Mm-hmm.
But here, they're really showing you kind of what's going on. And it really puts the fact, because Bix ended up cracking, and yet Leia didn't. So... And of course, she's being tortured by Vader now at this point. And you got to figure that between Andor and, because there's like 5 years between Andor and A New Hope, you got to figure they've even, gotten a little bit better at this torture thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too, to that point, and this is like a shine a light kind of on a misstep, so to speak. And that's kind of sometimes the problem too that you see within Star Wars. If you really don't, you just have to try to ignore it. But you just made a comparison from Bix to Leia, and it's like, okay, yeah, Bix, she cracked a little bit. I don't think she truly cracked.
Well, I think it's like kind of a spoiler. I think she ends up cracking. I read that somewhere.
Well, she might end up cracking. And I totally get it. However, think about it. Leia's a granddaughter of the Force.
Yeah.
So it's like, that might have aided her, unknowingly.
Which kind of makes me wonder, once again, I mean, that's a good point too. It's like, does anybody not see this? I mean, Leia kind of flew under she's like right there. She's in the room with Tarkin and Vader. It's like, yeah, I mean, she's kind of the little probe thing with the truth serum or whatever doesn't work. Their torture methods aren't working. She's basically this teenager with this, it's...
Well, yeah, that's why Tarkin said, her resistance to the mind probe is considerable. Like, all right, like Tarkin even had to respect her on that. Like, all right, I got to give it to you. But that's what I'm saying. Like, how did Vader not feel that?
That's like, the thing. It's like he could feel like Obi-Wan, right? He hasn't seen him in a while. This chick's like going like pretty much having regular meetings with these guys. Her. Yeah, it's like, come on now, and especially
that's what I say. Like, you have to kind of ignore that.
I know, because it wasn't originally written that way. I know. Exactly. I know. Let me get a couple of these chats in here, real quick, because I try to get them in while it still pertains to what we're talking about. David had actually said, "I hated Deidre, but after that interrogation scene, oh my, she's a beast. I got chills." And then,
yeah,
Dwight basically chatted and said, Partagaz is the guy's name, the ISB, the chief guy.
Yep.
See, somebody always helps us. Yeah. That's what I love about our audience, man. They help us out with this stuff. It's kind of like we're trying our best here, and people always help us out.
That's why it's a community, man.
That's right, man. It's a community, and that's really cool. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. And again, I mean, the thing about, because they do keep interspersing these prison scenes, like what you can see in this graphic, right? And there's some really cool interaction between Andy Serkis's character Kino and Andor. But the prison scenes are cool because they're showing in a very, like a subtle way, I guess would be the best way to put it. They're showing a very subtle version of Andor's skills at uniting people, that he can actually sort of reach people and start to give hope to the hopeless. And I mean, I think that you saw that in Rogue One in a way, when he's starting to turn Jyn around. And even though it was kind of the opposite at first, because, he's basically like, what do you even know? You've been kind of like in this thing for 10 minutes or something. You haven't seen everything I have. And when he gave that speech to her, now we're starting to see what it is exactly he's seen that he's talking about.
And experience, yeah,
And
exactly.
experience. Yeah. So I mean, I thought that these scenes were remarkable because on one hand, they're showing us what he's seen and what he's going through, but it's also showing us how he's starting to, maybe in a way, not quite yet, but he's beginning to resemble the Andor that we see in Rogue One. He's not there yet, but he's not even on the he's about to set foot on that path, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can see how he's so observant. He's always watching. That's one of his skills that you can tell that he's always watching. He's always picking things up and kind of like, okay, this is what it is. Like I love that part where he goes to the bathroom and he's like got his little knife and he's trying to saw the pipe and he's trying to do his little, he's got plans, man. And then he comes back out and I don't even know when he had a chance to even talk to that little guy, the little black dude that was standing there with him that he was kind of discussing things with, like, oh yeah, we can do this. Like, no, because X, Y, and Z, he's got a weapon, he doesn't, this guy's got the boots on, like they're having this whole little mini conversation, but this is like you
Well,
can see he's been moving himself around and being, strategic in whom he befriends and tries to, uh get information out of.
yeah, well, what's interesting about that, it's a couple of things that hit me about that. A couple of them are funny, and then there's some, legitimate observations. First thing is, he kind of takes that panel out and is trying to saw, and then he puts it back, and it's like, it's clearly been tampered with and damaged. I'm like, does
Yeah, it's
nobody
got
see
fingerprints
this?
all over it.
Yeah, it's like all scratched and it's bent. And it's not even. But, and again, this is what goes back to the title. Of course, Andor actually says it, which is a little on the nose. But nobody's listening. Like nobody really cares about what goes on in here. We're so insignificant to them that we could be talking about a plot to kill the Emperor and nobody would even bother taking it seriously. And I
Hmm.
thought that titling the episode that way was really poignant. And I started thinking about it, even though it's funny, right? I'm like, look, this plate is obviously damn. I mean, nobody could see that this has been tampered with. And then I started thinking about, in context to what Andor said, probably nobody even cares. They're like, yeah,
Well,
let him try
because
to escape.
yeah, it's like they're once again, it goes back to the thing where Andor even said at the beginning of the series when he's like, they never expected that somebody like me would be in their house. Like
Mm-hmm.
the Empire is because they have such a grip on everything, and like, and you really think about it though. I mean, you got to look at from the standpoint of if you look at where they are, they're in this underground. Well, for most of it, this underwater. I can't say underground, but underwater uh prison, right? That has
Mm-hmm.
multiple levels, right? And then you got all these floors that all they have to do is flip a switch and like things to like the heat would just kill you. They got these little shock wands that they, can subdue you with. And then on top of that, like this guy, this warden is walking around with this whole pain, inducer that just completely immobilizes you. So it's like, okay, how do you really expect to get out of that? And then even if you did get out of the actual building, let's just say, I mean, unless you got on a ship, where are you going?
Where are you going? Exactly. Where are you going to
That's what I'm
go?
saying. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, so the design of this thing is brilliant
You know what's
because it's
funny?
kind of like,
And I couldn't think of it before because the last two episodes obviously have been the prison episodes, right? 8 and 9.
mhm.
And, you know, like a lot of it totally reminded me of Squid Game. There was
Oh yeah,
definite Squid Game vibe to this. But I'm like, it reminds me of something else. It's Escape Plan. The Sylvester
mm,
Stallone Schwarzenegger thing.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's kind of like Squid Game meets that in a sense. And the look is Squid Game and then the vibe is that. But yeah, I mean, so that was insignificant. The other thing was there's a couple of things that struck me. One, when you're talking about where he was talking with that guy and he's obviously getting around and stuff like that. Yeah, he's finding out who he could trust. He's trying to unite some people in order to figure out a way to get out of there. But the other thing that was kind of cool to me was that clearly when he was trying to cut the pipe or whatever, and then he's talking to the guy. There is a little bit of downtime, which you did not get the vibe in the 8th episode that there was any downtime. But they're basically allowed, because, he just went back to his little room. And, I mean, he could have just been going back to his room to get a drink or something real quick and then gone back out to his table. And so from that standpoint, I was struck by the fact that they did have some freedom within their situation. And again, it's because their situation is so hopeless that it's like, whatever. Let them do whatever.
Exactly.
And so I thought that was actually pretty cool too, yeah. But then...
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. I mean, if you had another point to make about that part of it. I didn't want to steal
No,
your thunder.
I didn't.
Well, let me see if
go ahead.
I'm just trying to see if I've got anything on that stuff, on the prison stuff. Well, the prison stuff is just basically, there was a couple of things. Because again, we don't necessarily go in order on this show, so it doesn't really matter. But when you get towards the end and they're showing you more and more of the prison stuff, right? So Kino's whole thing is he's just like, look, just shut up, just toe the line. We don't have long to get out. I only have so many shifts left. When Andor first is asking him how many guards are around, he just like totally ignores them. And then, of course, time is going on. And then that old dude basically gets killed. He only had like 40 shifts left. They made no attempt to save him. The doctor is basically like, you're all pretty much disposable. And I think at that point, Kino realizes there's actually no getting out of this place. Like,
oh yeah, that was the beautiful part about his Andy Serkis's acting.
Yeah,
I mean, number one, just his facial expressions, right? But the fact that his intensity that he brought to his character of Kino, he said, look, I'm just the guy, I'm the lead, and he's just trying to, like you said, he's trying to toe the line, he's trying to play the good role, good behavior type thing. Like, look, guys, let's stay on target, let's stay on task, let's get this stuff done, let's cut out all the extra fluff, just do the job so we can get out of here. You only have X amount of shifts, so then once you do that, you're free to go. The whole thing was happening on level 2, which was crazy, and that was
level
like
2 thing, yep.
When everybody comes, what happened on level 2? What happened? And that's where like a lot of that tension built, because it was like you could feel what it would be like to be in that situation where you're stuck in this tube, and it's like, okay, this is taking longer than normal. Why aren't we moving? And then you're hearing all this rumbling of like, man, you hear what happened on level 2? So everybody's like, well, what happened? And so when you actually find out what happened on level 2, it was basically like guy that he finished his shift. Everybody thought like, oh, he's going home, he's getting out of here. They just stuck him on another floor. And then not only did they just stick this guy on another floor, but then they wiped out everybody on level 2. It was like a complete Auschwitz situation, like send them to the showers type thing. And that's where I said, this is where you start to feel that the Empire is so horrific. Like you start to see like people are just disposable to them. They don't care because they know another transport, 4 or 5 transports of new people are coming on anyway. So the machine just keeps on going. It's rinse, repeat. It doesn't even matter. They're actually probably clearing out space for new people to come in. So, it's just like, okay, we might as well just get rid of them all. And that's when Andy Serkis's character Kino, he's starting to realize. And so now, and because the whole time Andor was asking, I know you've thought about it, like you've had to, and then he's just like, whatever, don't just get that thought out of your head, forget about it. And now, so that's why he kept asking him over and over and over, probably 3 or 4 times. But by that time, the last time, that's when you could tell, like, okay, Kino's like, there's at least 12. And I was like, man, that was brilliant.
Then it fades out.
And
What a great ending.
Writing, man.
Yeah, that was
Brilliant
a great
writing.
ending. But here's another observation about Kino though that I thought, and this kind of speaks to the human condition a little bit, is that if you give somebody a little bit of power and responsibility, even though they're caged, they'll grab it. They'll grab it, and and I don't mean this in a bad way, because Serkis, like, Kino wasn't actually trying to be abusive with it really or anything like that. But he had a sense of purpose. It gave him a sense of purpose. I am responsible for this room, these people, and getting this job done. And even though
I don't think
he's,
it was purpose though. I think it was more hope than anything.
well, yeah, but either way, he still had a sense of he knew what he had to do. You know, I mean, it
Yeah,
was
he had
kind of
a
like he
job.
was obsessed with it. He had a job. He took it seriously. I want to, you know, I mean, obviously the ultimate goal was to be released, you know, do a good job, so everything else. But
Mm-hmm.
you get that sense where a lot of times, you know, it's not just like, you know, how there's those prisoners that they've been in so long that when they're out, they don't know what to do, so they commit a crime to get back in because it's
Mm-hmm.
just becomes the life they know. That's even more
Mm-hmm.
so if they've had any kind of power or responsibility or anything like that. It's like, well, in here, I'm a big fish. Out there, I'm just whatever,
Yeah.
you know, and a failure,
Well,
basically.
and that's the once again, that's the beautiful yet terrible thing about the Empire though,
Hmm.
is that they basically conditioned your mind to thinking that you're bigger than what you really are.
Yeah.
And that's one of those subtle things that I don't think a lot of people might have caught on to. But essentially what it's saying is like, okay, I'm making you my prisoner, but guess what? You're going to be my lead prisoner.
Yeah,
So because you're
exactly.
my lead prisoner, you have control over all these other prisoners. And if you do a good job, you know, maybe we'll release you. And so then now Kino is kind of like, all right, well, look, my release or my performance uh evaluation is based upon you guys. So it's no different than when you make a kid captain of a team or something like that. It's like, okay, they have that sense of responsibility and you want them to show that leadership. But in this situation, it's to serve the empire. It's not really to serve them. See,
Hmm.
when you're on a team as a kid, you know, and playing a sport, it's to build those leadership qualities in you to be able to then carry on throughout your life to benefit you. This isn't designed to benefit you. It's designed to benefit the empire. So it's like, okay, as long as you keep these people in line, you know, it's like, okay, and you feel like you're the top dog, but really you're just another cog in the wheel.
Yeah, that's so Palpatine-esque.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's a Palpatine move, man. And it's just, it's brilliant though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and then of course, when you start to move the third storyline in all this, I mean, because basically you could break this episode down into three storylines. Really, you have to follow Deidre and her thing, and Cyril and Bix when they're in this thing. It's really more to forward Deidre's
Deidre.
storyline, I think.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
then of course you have the whole Kino Andor thing, the prison part of it, and then of course you have
Mon Mothma.
Mon Mothma. And so, just before I get to Mon Mothma, because that's another big discussion point, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just kind of detour a little bit with Cyril in this thing,
Yes,
because
please.
he plays a little bit of a role in this that's really interesting. I mean, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
was it Voyager that was talking about all he does is eat cereal
Yeah.
last week? And so naturally, when he
Cereal, eat cereal.
yeah, when that shot came, the first one of him, and he's eating the cereal, I just cracked up because of Voyager's comments. I'm like, oh man, he's eating this. They're doing this on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But what was interesting about his attitude, though, is you could tell that as he's climbing the ranks and he's getting closer to what he wants, like you see the dynamic between him and his mom, though, has changed a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not quite it it's almost like I get the feeling like Cyril might actually turn on his mother at some point. You know, like he's just biding his time because
Oh
he,
yeah.
he's not as subservient and submissive. Now he's, you know, more or less just pretty much entertaining her, and that's about it. Like he doesn't care. He doesn't care as much about what she thought as what we saw in earlier episodes when he had first failed and had to go back.
Cereal is like a caged dog.
Yeah.
And it's just like he wants to roam and be the big dog on the yard. And
Mm-hmm.
they've sequestered him into the house, and he doesn't want to be a house dog. He wants to be in the yard. And the thing about it is that he's trying to, one, clear his name of past uh grievances, but at the same time, he also wants to get back out there and really put his stamp on this whole thing.
Yeah.
And then he starts to romanticize this whole thing with Deidre, which I
I
thought was
know,
like
man. That's just like,
brilliant. I
yeah.
thought that was
Her
brilliant. I mean, that was
reaction.
some brilliant writing because it was creepy, but it was like a weird, creepy kind of, but in a creepy way. It was cute for him to like.
Is very endearing.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very endearing. Like the fact that he kind of like started idolizing her, and just because she basically represents who he was trying to be back when he was at uh whatever that, I forgot the name of the place that he
Oh, the
was
corporate
on,
authority,
Fair
corporate sector
corporate
authority.
corporate corporate sector. That's what he wanted to be, but he wasn't prepared to be that. And then now he finds someone who's like, okay, you have the same passion and brain that I do. You're willing to go and do the things that you feel is necessary to get the job done. That's exactly what I was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And let me help you because I want to be a part of that, because I believe in what you believe. And the fact that he started, and it was weird because he was flirting with her,
No.
but it was like and it was like you could see Deidre's reaction to it. Like on one hand, you could tell she was conflicted because she didn't know what to make of it. She was like, on one hand, this is kind of cool, and you could tell, like, am I turned on by this? But at the same time, she's still trying to remain professional and keep, because she doesn't know, okay, is he trying to play me? And you could tell that she has her own trust issues with people because of where she works.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the fact that, like when he grabbed her arm and he was just like, no, listen. And, it was that tension once again, like I said, throughout this whole episode, it was there. It's like, okay, is she going to give? And I love the fact that she didn't give into it initially. I feel like she will eventually, but I like the fact initially she didn't give into it. But you can definitely tell it had a rattle, because even when she went back, you could still tell she was kind of trying to figure out, like, what the heck was that? Like,
Oh yeah.
but she
Well,
still remains focused on what she has to do. She couldn't allow herself to be sidetracked by it, but she wanted to. And I loved, once again, seeing that dynamic, because we're so used to seeing Deidre being so authoritative and so aggressive and just driven, and to see her play, like, even having a moment or a glimpse of femininity and softness
can I just
was
say
cool.
right here, that's the romantic comedy for Star Wars right there. Cyril and Deidre.
Oh man, that would be a romantic
That
comedy.
would
That
be
would be
awesome.
hilarious.
So David says, I don't blame him. I fell in love with her too. And is it me or did Deborah like it a little?
Oh yeah, yeah, Deborah,
Deidre, I think he means.
Deidre.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Did Deidre like it
But
a
yeah,
little? Yeah, I think, well, that's the thing. I think that she was sort of like simultaneously, I think she had three emotions going on. I think there was that she was creeped out, she was kind of
mm-hmm,
repulsed, but then she was also kind of turned on by it too. Like
mm-hmm,
and that's three very strange emotions to happen simultaneously. And hats off to the actress who plays Deidre, because she really conveyed those emotions very well,
yeah,
to the point where in the original trilogy characters did this brilliantly. You forget that they're actors. You actually just think that they're these people, you
yeah,
know? And the guy that plays Cyril, same thing, and his whole story arc is really interesting to me. I mean, it's a kind of like you don't usually see this. Usually if somebody fails somebody in about another 5, 6, 7 years, you're just going to be choked out by Vader if you do. You
mm-hmm,
know, we're at this point where we've never seen this kind of thing happen, because again, Andor is all about the details, the minutia, the lower
mm-hmm.
levels of the Empire. In fact, if I want to make, you already made the first Star Trek reference, I'll make one. It's kind of like Star Trek Lower Decks, but not a comedy
Comedy.
kind of spoof in a way. Um, this is actually, but it's kind of the same concept, though. It's like, okay, in Star Trek, you're always seeing what's happening on the bridge and the command level characters. What about the
Mm-hmm.
people that are just the workers and on the lower decks? What are they going
Mm-hmm.
through when you're about to attack, whatever? What's going on with them? And Lower Decks is probably one of the most brilliant shows, period, that I've seen in a long time. But yeah, let's see. David put something else here. He says the episode did great setting up the old man's death. Talk about stirring a rebellion. I got pissed off too. Well, again, yeah, going back to that, and I think we talked about the fact that it's a turning point for Kino. That's really what
Mm-hmm.
that served. Andor pretty much already knew what was going on.
Yeah.
I think it was Kino that really had the revelation of, hey, these guys aren't quite as... Because, they're looking at the doctor going, well, are you going to do anything? Yeah, he's basically going to put him out of his misery.
Yeah, basically, because he's like, dude had a massive stroke, and it's like, dude, he's not going to be useless. And he's like, honestly, this is the easier way for him, because if I bring him back and help him the Empire's not going to do anything but probably either torture him or kill him, and just in a more horrific way. Like, at least this way, it's peaceful for him. He won't even feel it.
Yeah. And so again, these are the kinds of things that you deal with. So now we can get to the Mon Mothma part. First, right out the gate, we find out that Vel is Mon Mothma's cousin.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an interesting thing. And then that whole dynamic at the dinner table,
Oh yeah.
where the husband was kind of, Perrin or whatever his name is, was kind of sniping at Vel and back and forth. But it was funny because, again, if there was something that you can really point out about Mon and just the people that are around her, it's all about duality with these people. They have to pretend to be something or put on a front or whatever, and I thought it was great. Vel's buying Lita or whatever a dress, and it's kind of like, oh, try it on. Okay, now this is what we have to do. Oh, that dress looks great.
Exactly.
That kind of thing. It's like,
yeah, it's that.
It's like,
okay, I need to get you out of the room so we can have the real conversation.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so
it's totally like this whole the superhero thing. It's the Batman, Clark Kent, Bruce Wayne type thing, where it's like, okay, I have to the public, I have to appear this way, but this is who I really truly am. And but except for these, individuals don't have superpowers, but they have a super mission, however, that they're trying to achieve. And I love the fact that, Vel almost has to remind Mon Mothma, like, look, the mission comes first before anything, before even our relationship. This mission, this is what we took off, this is what we signed up for. So stick to it.
Well, and I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that Mon was trying to take a little bit more of a passive route to this rebellion, because you basically have like three sort of variations, right? You have Mon, who wants to take a united yet passive route to it. You have Vel and Luthen and those guys that want to take a more active role, but they still want to unite everybody. And then you have Saw, who basically wants to keep everybody as their own factions and not necessarily act as one unit. So you basically have like these three different ideologies for what the rebellion should be. And I think that that's just a really cool thing, because I'm sure we're going to see Saw again pretty soon. So,
yeah,
and
that's the thing. It's like, everybody has a different cause or different way of approaching the same, objective or goal. And that's the thing about a rebellion or a movement, is that, like, okay, well, what's the best way? Well, some people feel like, yeah, you got to take action. You got to show people that, hey, you're not just going to walk over me. And then there's the other who are like, well, we can leave things. It's like the whole civil rights movement, like Dr. King versus Malcolm. It's like, okay, what side are you on? They're both right. It's just to what degree, and when does one go away and the other one rises?
And it's more of a time period thing. It's like a situational thing. Circumstances dictate one or the other depending on what's going on. And I think you see the same thing in this, Although what's going to be really interesting to me, and it's kind of a look ahead, because obviously I keep Rogue One in the back of my mind, right? The
Hmm.
thing that I find really interesting is Cassian ends up with Mon Mothma. So you got to wonder, like, okay, well, what happened to Vel and Luthen and all those guys? Are they part of that? Or does it become that Andor eventually kind of sides more with the Mothma side of things, and maybe what Mon sees in Andor is like, okay, when some dirty stuff needs to be done that I don't want to know about, I'll get this guy to do it. That's probably how it's
Well,
going to play out.
well, that's true. I mean, and then of course, we don't know because the rebellion is, galaxy wide. You know, I mean, Luthen and all those characters could still be around. They could just be on
Yeah,
other
that's true.
planets
They could write that.
doing the
Yeah,
job.
they're
And
on
we
a
don't know.
mission somewhere. That's where they've been the
Exactly.
whole original trilogy.
Right.
Or yeah, you remember the Death Star battle? Oh yeah, Luthen was in one of the. I mean, you could always pull that too. There's like 100 ships out there, doing it. But
Well, I heard that. What was the name? The guy from. Was it A New Hope? Or it
oh
might have
no,
been
no, no,
Return of
no,
the
it was Rogue
Jedi.
One. No, well, there was a Rogue One. There's a Rogue One guy that was in this episode. Um, it was an Easter egg from the episode. I went in because I was sort of curious when I saw that shot for shot little
With Leia.
homage to the Leia thing. I
Hmm.
was like, I wonder what else is in this. So I basically punched up the Easter eggs, and that was another one of them. That it was like some character, I forgot who it was. That was one of Andor's guys, and Rogue One was in it. But that's the
No, but I
thing
mean,
that
I thought the guy who so Luthen, I heard. Well, I won't say I heard, but I'm wondering if he's the guy who, when they coordinated that whole attack in Return of the Jedi, the older guy with the white hair, is that supposed to be Luthen?
no,
Okay.
no. Although it would be cool. I mean, and I know who was it? Uh, is that one dude in Return of the Jedi? So there was like Maydeen and all those guys.
Hmm.
And there's that one dude that kind of looks like Rex, so they made him Rex.
Oh yeah.
There is that kind of thing going on, but yeah, that's not supposed to be. But yeah, it should be, that part should be interesting. The whole thing, of course, with the Senate scene, we already went through that and how just compelling and everything that was. And you're seeing basically what's happening is, and we talked about this extensively, I think, in the last episode, where Mon's getting attacked from all sides at this point. She's
Hmm.
losing support in the Senate and nobody wants her there. Her own family is thinking that she's useless or whatever. Even the people that she's supposed to be, she's trying to work towards this whole rebellion thing, and even her fellow rebels, are like, no, you need to be doing it this way or whatever. So it's kind of interesting that she's sort of like on an island in that sense.
Yeah, and that's why I love the fact that when her cousin walked out, you know, you just saw her just standing alone.
Yeah.
Like, just kinda just because that's exactly how she feels. It's like, "Okay, I'm kind of alone out here for the most part," or sometimes I have people I can talk to, but then I'm back to being alone again.
Well, and the two things that really stuck out in a lot of the Mothma scenes for me was, one, we always seem to get these like really cool lines lately in these episodes. There's usually one per episode somewhere, and the one for this one is when Vel says the Empire doesn't rest. It's
Mhm.
kind of like, look,
Mhm.
there's no downtime. We have to, when she was kind of making her case. So I thought that was really cool, and that's something that's worth keeping in mind. And then of course the
Oh,
other
yeah.
one was when Tay comes back. It's just like, and this is what's going to be interesting too, although I'll get to that more in my thoughts for episode 10. But when he comes back just saying, look, it's no money, we got to get it from somebody else, and ends up being this like thug that she doesn't really trust at all, but he's the only source of funding. So
Mhm.
you're starting to see a lot of this background for the rebellion.
Yeah, you're starting well, the other part about it is that you have to, and this is the business of politics, unfortunately, but you gotta get in bed with people you don't wanna get in bed with
Hmm.
in order to, and that's what that's what Val was trying to say. It was like, look, forget your personal feelings or your squeaky clean image. Like, we got to do things that may be unsavory to some, but it's for the greater good. Like, we have to do it. And I think she's starting to kind of come to terms with that, and it hurts her because she wants to be, this shining white light, and you can be, but just have to understand that at the base of that bulb, sometimes it gets a little corrosion on it. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
that's the reality of it all, and Mon Mothma is slowly starting to realize that.
All right. Well, so what are your, I guess, final thoughts on this episode?
Final thoughts. Once again, excellent episode. I thought it moved the story in so many different ways. We got a lot of action without action, if that makes sense. I think that we got some great performances from Andy Serkis. We got some great performances from uh, Deidre. Uh, we got some great performances from Cyril. So most majority of the characters in this particular episode um, just delivered. They delivered
Mhm.
right on the money, and even some of the more um, minuscule or smaller characters, um, even like the for example, the guy who does the sign language between the two
Oh, yeah.
uh, pipes, or
Yeah, the
the two
levels of
hallways,
some, yeah.
the levels. Just watching them, kind of trying to communicate to each other, and everybody's trying to pass, the message like, "Well, what's going on?" And it's just that type of acting. The fact that he looks anxious, and the fact that you could tell that there's something going on. Just really well done. Really, really well done. I want to see more about what's going on with Bix, but um, overall, I would probably give this episode. I'll give it at least an 8.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go with an 8 on it. Um, it was definitely a fantastic episode. Pacing was great. Like you said, I mean, pretty much echoing pretty much everything that you said. I do like the fact that it's, again, showing the progression of how the Republic has changed into this thing where it still, in some ways, in some circles, resembles the old, not the old Republic, but the former Republic, let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, it's different. Everything is different. And I think that that's something that this show is doing a really good job of hammering home, is that, yeah, there's some things that kind of look the same from the outside, but from the inside, it's a completely different thing. And like you said, all the characters move forward, and there was just a lot of really cool things that occurred during this episode, which, of course, if you guys are just tuning in or whatever, we've been talking about for the last hour. So you're going to want to go back and catch that. But yeah, I think that overall, this is just a really fantastic episode. So that said, now, what are you looking forward to seeing for episode 10?
10. I want to see the plan on how they get out of there. I thought we were going to see more of it in this episode,
I know, I did
at
too.
least the talks of it,
Yeah,
because
so did
like,
I.
okay, this is, but and maybe that's probably going to be the heavy focus of episode 10. And now it's like, okay, and it's crazy because after that, really it's only 2 more episodes left.
I know.
And so I feel kind of like, man, like, just when things are really starting to heat up, it's about to be over with.
Well, and
So
what's really bad about that? Because there's that article that I sent you yesterday where they're basically saying, look, this is going to be a long wait for season 2. We might not get season 2 until 2024.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So, it's is what it is, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I would say, again, I usually give like 3 things. I try to keep it to 3 things. 3 things that I would like to see. 1, I want to see more about what happens with Bix. We
Yeah,
established in the opening
definitely.
shot that she's going through this whole thing and that she has some information. She's obviously important enough to the Empire to interrogate. So now that you've done so, and maybe she gave a little bit of information or whatever, I want to see where she goes from here. I mean, does she end up getting imprisoned? Does she have to escape herself? Do they just kind of let her go? Do they end up killing her? I mean, I just want to see now, okay, what happens next with this character. Second thing I'd like to see is the whole thing that you alluded to, the Kino thing, right? Like, we thought we may be seeing some of the planning for the prison break or whatever. Are we going to see that in the next episode? I think that we need to see the prison break. I don't actually think that they're going to hold that for the finale. I think that this, what we're calling this prison trilogy, is actually going to conclude in the next episode. But after that, we have 11 and 12. So it's like, well, what are the two final episodes going to be about? I mean, of course, we'll do thoughts on that after episode 10, obviously, but,
right.
you know.
Well, a couple of things I want to see. I want to see more of this Deidre and Cyril relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think we're going to get more of that. So I definitely want to see that. That has great interest to me. And then I really want to see if Mon Mothma, how is she going to change? Because, like, okay, she's starting to see like how the Senate is responding. She's seeing how everybody else is like, okay, is she going to take that? I mean, she's got to take that plunge at some point. And so I want to see if Mon Mothma actually starts to get her hands dirty now. Like, okay, you know what? Everybody else is kind of doing this. Screw it, and I want to see her take that leap. So those are my other two things that I want to see for hopefully starting in the next episode.
Yeah, and my final one that I want to see, it relates to Mon Mothma too, but it's a little bit more specific, and that is, I want to see if she trusts this new money source, this thug character or whatever that she. I want to see where that goes. I want to see what's going on with that, and because she has to do something, and so I think that could actually bring up some really cool things. But again, it's not really about what we want; it's about what you guys want. So. Leave your comments in the comment section. You still have like maybe 20 more seconds or something to chat something in if you guys want to rate the episode or something. And of course, yeah, you definitely want to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Keep your eye in the community tab because we definitely are going to be posting there more often and letting you guys know what's going on. Or maybe we'll put some polls up or, we might put some fun stuff in there too just to engage you guys and keep a conversation going. We'll put some interesting links in there as well. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that we can put in there, so it's really cool. I'm so glad that YouTube finally opened that up. And of course, you guys can help us out by continuing your support. I haven't actually talked about this in a while, but we do have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the description where you can financially support us if you feel so inclined. But again, hitting the like button, subscribing to our channel, I mean, that really is thanks enough. And we do appreciate you guys being here. So now Monday, we have our episode 2 of Tales of the Jedi.
Yes, sir.
So that should be a lot of fun to do, as always. It's nice that we actually have another animated series that you actually like. That we can review. So that's, that's always fun. That's always good. So make sure you guys join us Monday night at 8. Again, whether it's a live episode or pre-recorded episode, you're going to see something from us on Mondays and Fridays. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.